The night of August 8, 1963, was a completely normal night for train driver Jack Mills. He was driving his Royal Mail train from Glasgow toward London at high speed. Suddenly, in the darkness ahead, he noticed that the signal light had turned red. The surrounding area was completely deserted, surrounded only by dense woodland. For the first time that night, Jack felt something was wrong. And the reason for that fear was one compartment of his train, which was loaded with bags containing £2.6 million in cash. In today's terms, that would be worth more than £50 million. Reluctantly, Jack stopped the train when he saw the red signal. For a few seconds, everything was silent. There wasn't a single sound. Then suddenly, the bushes near the tracks began to rustle. What followed would become one of the greatest train robberies in history. The robbers didn't just steal the money, they took control of the entire train without firing a single shot. Before we continue, it's important to understand why so much money was being transported on this train. Royal Mail trains at that time were quite unique. Along with letters and parcels, they also transported large amounts of cash from money orders sent between cities. This money was stored in a special compartment called the High Value Packages Coach, also known as the HVP coach. Normally, the HVP coach was attached directly behind the engine, but here's the twist. Apart from the train driver and a few selected officials, almost no one knew in advance when a Royal Mail train would be carrying this high-value compartment. And this is where the inside man enters the story. Months before the robbery, an unknown insider met a criminal mastermind named Bruce Reynolds. He revealed that on August 7, 1963, a Royal Mail train would depart from Glasgow to London carrying an HPV coach filled with cash. We'll talk more about this insider later. First, let's understand who Bruce Reynolds was. Reynolds was an extremely intelligent criminal who had already carried out several robberies in the past. He had his own small team that helped him plan these crimes. But there was one problem. He had never robbed a train before, so Reynolds needed people with experience. To solve this, he recruited another gang known as the South Coast Raiders. They had previously carried out train robberies and knew how to execute a heist quickly and disappear without leaving a trace. Slowly, the team grew larger. Some members had railway knowledge, while others specialized in logistics and planning. Eventually, the operation involved 15 people. Their objective was simple: steal the money without firing a single shot. They spent weeks planning every detail. The most valuable information came from the insider, who secretly provided information about the Royal Mail train's schedule and security. It is believed that this insider was a senior security official working within the Royal Mail system itself, and to this day, no one knows his identity. On August 7, 1963, at around 6:50 p.m., the Royal Mail train departed from Glasgow Central Station. The train had 12 coaches, and inside them were 72 postal workers sorting letters and parcels while the train was moving. This train didn't stop at regular stations. Instead, it used a special hook mechanism to collect and drop off mail bags while still in motion, making the Royal Mail trains extremely fast and efficient. However, the most important coach, the HVP coach carrying millions of pounds in cash, had not yet been attached. It was waiting at another station further along the route. The insider had already told Bruce Reynolds exactly where and when the HVP coach would be attached, so the robbery wouldn't happen too early. Many people might wonder why a train carrying so much money didn't have heavy security. 3 years earlier, in 1960, the Post Office Investigation Branch had ordered that every HPV coach must be fitted with an alarm system. But despite these instructions, alarms were installed in only 3 HVP coaches, while the rest were kept as reserve units without alarms. And this is where luck favored the robbers. On the night of the robbery, the HPV coach with the new alarm system was suddenly declared out of service. As a result, railway staff had to attach a reserve coach without any alarm system. This wasn't a coincidence. The insider had already informed Bruce Reynolds about this change, which is what triggered the entire robbery plan. The train continued its journey toward London, now carrying £2.6 million in cash. Bruce and his gang were ready. At around 3 a.m. on August 8, 1963, one member of the gang climbed to a signal post, covered the green signal with cloth, and placed a small battery-powered red light on top. This created a fake red signal, while the rest of the gang hid in the bushes nearby. Soon the train approached the signal and stopped. Driver Jack Mills waited calmly while his assistant climbed down to use the trackside telephone to contact the signal operator. But the wires had already been cut. As he turned back toward the train, the gang attacked. Half of them rushed into the engine and struck Jack Mills on the head. knocking him unconscious. The others captured the assistant driver, tied him up, and held him inside the engine cabin. Another group quickly uncoupled the first 2 coaches, the engine and the HPV coach, from the remaining 10 coaches. Their plan was to drive the engine and the HVP coach about 1 kilometer to a nearby bridge where their trucks were waiting. Everything was going according to plan until a sudden problem appeared. The gang had brought along a retired train driver to operate the locomotive, but the moment he saw the controls, he panicked. The train was too modern for him. For a few seconds, Bruce Reynolds didn't know what to do. Then he made a quick decision. He revived the injured Jack Mills and threatened him to drive the train or lose his life. Despite his serious head injury, Jack slowly started the train and drove it to the planned location beneath Bridego Bridge. The other 10 coaches behind them had no idea what had happened. At the bridge, more gang members were waiting. They forced open the HVP coach doors and tied up the postal workers inside. Inside the coach were 128 large bags filled with bundles of £5 and £10 banknotes. In total, the bags weighed nearly 20 tons and contained £2.6 million. Below the bridge, the gang had parked several trucks. They formed a human chain and began passing the bags down one by one. They had only 15 minutes before the police would likely be alerted. Working rapidly, they managed to load 120 of the 128 bags. 8 bags had to be left behind when time ran out. Before leaving, they warned the train crew not to move for 30 minutes. All their vehicles had identical fake license plates to confuse witnesses. By around 4:30 a.m., the gang arrived at their safe house, a farmhouse located about 43 kilometers away. There they celebrated wildly, and some even played Monopoly using real stolen money. But their celebration didn't last long. Soon a news broadcast reported that police had launched a massive search within a 50-kilometer radius of the robbery site. The police had calculated the distance based on the 30-minute delay the robbers had given the train crew. Realizing the police were closing in, panic spread among the gang, and they decided to abandon the safe house earlier than planned. Before leaving, they divided the money. Each member received a share worth millions of pounds in today's value. They carefully wiped fingerprints throughout the house, but they made one critical mistake. They forgot to clean the Monopoly game cards. When police later raided the farmhouse, they found fingerprints on the cards. Since most of the robbers already had criminal records, their fingerprints were already stored in police databases. One by one, the gang members were identified and arrested. Out of the 16 people involved, 14 were eventually captured. Only 2 people were never identified: the mysterious insider who provided the information and the retired train driver who was supposed to operate the locomotive. Their identities remain unknown even today. The court later called the crime the robbery of the century. The captured robbers were sentenced to 30 years in prison. The bridge where it happened is still known as Train Robbers Bridge. As for driver Jack Mills, he never fully recovered from his injuries and passed away 7 years later. And that is the story of one of the most famous and mysterious train robberies in history.